In today's video, I want to talk about why maybe the idea of hypothetically Jasmy at the price of 25 cents still wouldn't surprise me in an event where maybe, let's say, there is an altcoin season during this cycle. But even though nothing I say is financial advice, why am I still thinking about that? It's because when I take a look at Jasmy, I like it fundamentally. It's focused on decentralizing data storage. But before I get into that, I just want to explain just kind of I would say, mentality of me again behind 25 cents, because that is around an 18x from here. And the market cap at that point, considering current circulating supply, would be around 12.5 billion. And to me, that market cap doesn't seem like maybe that ridiculous. Like, just personally, right? Because, even Dogecoin right now, take a look at how massive that market cap is currently. And even like back in 2021, for instance, the market cap was over 80 billion at that time. Now, I'm not saying that Jasmy is going to be more popular than that, but this is like even small glimpse of what it achieved years ago. However, even besides that, what I like about Jasmy and its focus on decentralizing data storage is that when it comes to this specific niche, or should I say this market sector, there's actually not that much, popular competitors in my opinion. What do I mean by this? Like, sure, Jasmy is pretty popular, and I would say that arguably the most popular one right now within this space is something called Filecoin. However, if we take a look at beyond these two projects, right? Let's say we take a look at Arweave, Siacoin, Storage. Storage is actually spelled STORJ, so sometimes people call it Storj, sometimes people call it Storage, but you know what? It's tomato to me. However, to me, when it comes to that amount of competitors, it's actually not that many, right? If I take a look at blockchain gaming, when I take a look at NFTs, there's a bunch. But then in this case, there doesn't seem to be that many that are that popular. So I kind of like that when it comes to Jasmy. Yeah, sure, the market sector isn't the most popular out there, but, there's actually not that many competitors that are that famous. And if there was, let's say, attention for, projects that are focused on data storage, then I would find that, hypothetically, there's even not that many, again, popular options to begin with. So I kind of like that when it comes to Jasmy. Now, sometimes you like to say, okay, but why would anyone care about this market sector? When it comes to this, what I find pretty interesting is that according to Fortune Business Insights, the global data storage market size is expected to be worth nearly $800 billion by 2030. So that's pretty impressive in my opinion. Not to mention as well, when I take a look at Jasmy, I like its management team. Like, for instance, I see people in Jasmy's management team who used to work at places like Sony, so I find that very impressive. And also, supposedly, Jasmy is the first ever legally compliant cryptocurrency in the country of Japan. And even because of that, right, a lot of people kind of give it the nickname of the Bitcoin of Japan, which of course Jasmy is different. It is not Bitcoin, right? But then it's just kind of the nickname because of that accomplishment. So I find that very impressive as well when it comes to Jasmy. Not to mention, there is something called Junction, which I find pretty interesting because if we take a look at what is Junction, right? It's an incubation project under Jasmy. It's a layer 2 basically for decentralized AI. And I find this pretty interesting because if I take a look at, the AI market, it is predicted to be worth nearly $2 trillion by 2030, according to Grandview Research. Now, when it comes to Junction, I don't think it's going to become the biggest, thing that's focused on AI out there, just personally in my perspective, but it's still a good addition nonetheless because, yes, again, Jasmy has that aspect of being focused on data storage, but then seeing that as well, I think is pretty cool, especially through, again, something like Junction, which is, an incubation project under Jasmy, and again, a layer 2 for decentralized AI. So when it comes to Jasmy overall, I like the vibe when it comes to the project, and when it comes to sometimes people like to tell me, oh, but it's not that exciting, it's not that interesting. If by definition something fun or interesting is like a meme coin, then yeah, it's probably not that, of course, right? Jasmy is not a meme coin, but it's more so a project that's driven through utility, through kind of the use case. So it's a different vibe. When it comes to my portfolio, I'm not only just holding Jasmy, by the way. Of course, I'm holding other projects too. I also hold meme coins and, projects that are focused on, let's say, blockchain gaming and stuff like that. But still, I kind of want to have Jasmy as one of my foundational pieces. And I'm not telling them to do anything, by the way, but the reason why is because, again, I like the focus on data storage, and I just like the whole vibe overall when it comes to Jasmy. However, also on top of that, to just kind of harp back on that meme coin aspect that I mentioned before, what I find pretty interesting about Jasmy is that, yes, it's not a meme coin. The use case, I think, hypothetically seems pretty good to me. But then when it comes to the community, when it comes to the passion, it does feel like a meme coin a little bit, because when I take a look at meme coins, sometimes the community is very passionate. They are very driven, right? And it just kind of has this energy. And I think it's because, a lot of these meme coins, they don't necessarily have the best use case out there. So kind of the vibe, the energy kind of supplements that. But then when it comes to Jasmy, it kind of gives me that vibe, but then it actually has a use case. So then I find that pretty interesting. It's kind of like a best of both worlds type of scenario. But again, this is just my outlook when it comes to it. And I find that pretty interesting because if I take a look at, for instance, something like Filecoin, something like Arweave, something like, Storage, or should I say Storage A, when I take a look at some of these competitors, yeah, sure, they are again focused on data storage, right? But then I kind of feel like Jasmy has a little bit of that it factor in terms of, again, kind of just the vibe, at least personally for me. However, don't get me wrong, I'm also like excited, for instance, in the case of Filecoin. But then I just like Jasmy's overall energy, a little bit of the vibe. And I think that is something pretty unique because if, let's say, I'm a developer and I make a project, right? Sure, I could maybe design the use case and the fundamentals, but then in terms of having that passionate community, having, that sort of it factor, that sometimes can't really be preemptively designed for, in my opinion. I don't think it sometimes could be like planned for. So I like that when it comes to Jasmy. And ultimately, though, personally for me, I think all I can do is just stay patient in this case. I get it. Jasmy has had a pretty big pullback, but right now, we're seeing the space sort of have a pretty okay recovery, right? And, I don't think I've seen an altcoin season during this cycle yet, even though, Jasmy for a moment in time during this cycle showed like, a moment of somewhat brilliance, I would say, before the pullback. But still, I don't think that was even really like an altcoin season. So I'm still staying patient. Now, whenever that hypothetical altcoin season, if it ever even wants to start during this cycle, it's going to be beyond my control. So there's one thing I can do, and I think that's just stay patient, and that's literally about it. And all I've been doing, right, is dollar cost averaging, holding, and just waiting, and that's pretty much about it. I've been holding Jasmy ever since, give or take, around the beginning of 2023. So it's been quite a while. It's been nearly basically 3 years at this point. Now it's a little bit over 2 years, but again, still nearly 3 years. So it's been quite a while, but you know what? I'm still staying patient. I'm still holding, and that's pretty much about it. I'm not telling you to do anything, by the way, but I'm just going to wait it out. Whatever happens, be it, let's say, hypothetically, there's an altcoin season in October, let's say it waits until even January or even March of next year, who knows? It's going to be beyond my control. Even if I pulled up a price chart, drew a random triangle, or a falling wedge pattern, the market's not going to care about that. So ultimately, I'm just going to control myself because that's the only thing that's within my control. And that's just dollar cost averaging, holding, and just waiting. And that's about it. But, again, maybe the idea of 25 cents, it hasn't hypothetically left my mind. However, only time will tell. I'm just, again, waiting. And that's pretty much about it. And feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'd greatly appreciate it. It's only the Captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.